Do you need a landscaping job tackled? Keen Landscaping is a family-owned and operated full-service landscaping company based in Dallas, Texas. Anything from property restoration and tree pruning or removal to landscape design, construction, and installation, Keen covers it all. They're also the official landscape company of the Dallas Stars. Learn more at keenlandscaping.com. Again, that's Keane, landscaping.com. Welcome to Parker's MMA Show. If you want to learn about all things going down in the fight world, you've come to the right place. Each episode, your host Parker Keene will take a deeper dive into the always entertaining world of sanctioned fist fighting. Now here's your host, Parker Keene.
Now we're ready. Billy, what's up? We're back in action.
Dude, welcome. New background, new location. It's a whole new world out here for Parker's MMA Show.
You look like you're in a prison. Where are you at?
Cape Cod at my in-laws, so, not far.
Wow, very nice. All right, well, we're back in action this week, episode 47. We got a couple fight cards we missed we're going to catch up on. We're going to preview this week's card, and then we're going to get into some Nick and Nate Diaz talk. So, Billy, let's dive right in. Episode 47, here we go. Everyone like, subscribe, share, do all that good stuff. All right, let's do it. So let's start off in the light heavyweight division. We had Anthony Smith taking on Alexander Rakic. Billy, what did you think of that fight?
Man, Alexander Rakic, talk about brutal leg kicks, right? This guy came in and right from the first round, he kicked Anthony Smith's legs out, and Anthony Smith is about as tough as they come and has great Muay Thai, so I was really impressed with Rakic. I thought he should have finished this fight, to be honest. That would be my one criticism, but, the leg kicks, man, those were friggin' brutal. What did you think?
Yeah, same. It was just, unfortunately, it's kind of two back-to-back beatings for Lionheart Smith, and it's hard to watch from a guy that you and I think really highly of, and he's a great fighter, as tough as they come. But not a good look. It was kind of more of the same from the Glover fight. He was just looked like he was kind of stuck in mud, couldn't get going, and was just kind of getting beat down. So tough loss for Anthony Smith. Where do you think that leaves him right now?
I hate to say it, man. I'm a huge Anthony Smith fan. I love the story. I love this whole, guy who was kind of 500 on the regionals, right. Was kind of middling at middleweight and then moves up to light heavyweight, makes the title run, could have taken the title win against John Jones. A lot of people forget about that, he got a legally kneed and he could have walked away the champion that night and, kind of toughed it out and didn't take it. Guy who beat Gustafsson, he beat Volkan Ozdemir. But he's looked terrible his past two fights, man. He's looked really, really bad. And I just wonder, for a guy has 50 pro MMA fights, is it about time for Anthony Smith? Is this the end for him? I don't know. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I'm torn. I think he's a guy that's got a lot of fight left in him, but I feel very similar about Anthony Smith as I do Tyron Woodley right now. It's just the last two fights for both of those guys, it just seems like whatever they had, on their rise to greatness. Obviously, Anthony Smith didn't quite get a title, but they just don't have it. It's like I don't know. They're just stuck and they just can't let their hands go and let it go. But I don't know. I think for Anthony Smith, if he wants to keep fighting, it's time to make some serious changes. I floated the idea about him going back down to middleweight. I don't know if he's willing or even that's even crossed his mind, but I just think there's a lot of fresh, really, really fun stylistic matchups down there for him. I think light heavyweight is just getting too ruthless with all these just killers rising up through the ranks right now, especially with John Jones gone. The new guard is starting to rise up, but I don't know. I think he's got some hard decisions to make, but if he did decide to make that move down to middleweight, him versus Yoel Romero, Darren Till, Costa, if Costa doesn't beat Israel, Rob Whittaker, every one of those fights is a headline fight. Awesome stylistic fight. So I don't know, for him, maybe a change of pace, similar to when he came up to light heavyweight, he went on that run. Maybe a move back down to middleweight would give him some new life. What about for Rakic? Where do you think he goes from here?
I mean, this guy now, Alexander Rakic is undeniably kind of, in that 5 to 6 range, at light heavyweight. I think he's probably 1 to 2 fights away from the title. I was really impressed by him. I thought he looked pretty lackluster in his fight against Volkan Ozdemir, and he looked great against Anthony Smith. I mean, he really took it to Anthony Smith. I didn't think Anthony Smith won a single round. I didn't think he was in that fight from the first minute. That's a guy who was a title challenger, who's beaten some of the best light heavyweights of all time. I mean, that's really, really impressive to do what Alexander Rakic did. So I think he's a top 5 light heavyweight right now, and I don't really think it's arguable.
I agree. I think everyone's pretty much matched up, so I think you and I agree that your guy, Yuri Prohaska? Is it Prohaska?
Yuri Prohaska, yes.
There you go. It looks like those guys are kind of on a crash course right now, and I think that's a great matchup in that 5 to 6 range at light heavyweight right now. So I'm down for that next. I think stylistically that's a super fun fight.
That's fight of the night, man. That's fight of the night right there. Those guys are going to go after each other. There's going to be standing and banging. Yuri Prohaska is going to do all kinds of weird kung fu stuff. Like I would be really excited to watch that fight. I know it's kind of two guys without names, but stylistically, that's as fun as it gets, and it's 2 big boys, too.
Yeah, and that's something I think you put on one of these big cards coming up to showcase these guys, because both of these guys, in my opinion, are probably 1 to 2 fights away from getting a title shot. So I think they're probably at 5 and 6 right now, something like that. But
I think they are at 5 and 6.
Yeah, so I think that's kind of a no-brainer matchup next. All right, let's move on to one more fight on that card. You had Alonzo Menifield taking on Ovince St. Preux. OSP is now 3-3 in his last 6. Where do you see him, stacking up in this light heavyweight division right now?
It's interesting. He's a guy who I had kind of written off. I thought he looked really bad against Rothwell at heavyweight. But, he's a guy who's fought the elite of that division, and I think he showed he's still in that mix in that top 15, kind of the 10 to 15 range at light heavyweight. I mean, he really fought his fight against Menifield. He slowed it down. He picked his spots. He got a KO kind of late in that second round. I thought he looked as good against Alonzo Menifield as he's looked in years. What do you think?
I agree. It's just, again, it's hard. I mean, he's 37 years old. We're talking about Anthony Lionheart Smith being old. He's 32 years old. OSP's 37 in that division. It's tough right now. And I just don't see a path for him to break into that top 5, looking at the rankings right now. So, I think he's a guy who's physically still looks great. I think he hangs around for a couple more years, maybe bounces back and forth from light heavyweight to heavyweight. But, yeah, good performance and another good win for him. For Menifield, he's now got 2 straight losses. What do you think kind of about the hype train of Menifield as a prospect in the UFC?
Yeah, I mean, he was one of these young, light heavyweights. He looks great getting off the bus, right? I mean, he's absolutely shredded. And he was knocking everybody out. And now he's got 2 straight losses. And, it's kind of looking like that hype train is derailed a bit. Looking like he maybe wasn't necessarily the prospect or the future champion that some people thought that he was, but he's still young. He's definitely young in the sport, and I think he can go back to the drawing board a little bit, figure out how to work in his wrestling, maybe work some ground and pound in future fights and kind of get back to it. But, kind of a disappointing 2 losses, in my opinion, for a guy who looked like he was headed to the top of that division, and now it looks like he's going to struggle to stay in the top 15, to be honest.
Yeah, so for OSP, who would you like to see him match up with next?
I love OSP versus Johnny Walker. I think that's a great fight.
Yeah.
I think that's a perfect matchup. The other one I like not as much is, it's been booked before, but OSP against Ryan Spann. But I think with John Jones leaving light heavyweight, there's really a reset on this division. So OSP puts a couple wins here together. He's one of the bigger names in the division. I don't see any reason why, 2 or 3 wins, OSP's right back in that title conversation, which was unfathomable to think before this fight.
Yeah. I like that. I like Johnny Walker's a great matchup. I also like someone like Lionheart Smith. I think that's another fun fight. Great stylistic matchup for him. So, let's transition here a little bit. Let's go to Bellator. We had our guy Nemkov knocking out Ryan Bader. I don't think any of us saw that coming. So, how surprised were you at that result?
I was shocked, man, because it wasn't just that he knocked him out. Like, Bader was not competitive in this fight, right? Like, I think Bader landed less than 10 strikes the entire fight. He was not able to get any takedowns, and Nemkov just bullied him around the cage and beat him up. Like, I mean, that's really impressive. We haven't seen anyone do that to Ryan Bader since John Jones.
Right. No, I totally agree. I was honestly, I didn't watch the fight live, but when I got the notification, I was shocked. I was like, holy shit, I can't believe that happened. That's crazy. What did you make of the stoppage?
Really bad, right? I mean, I think we both talked about this after the fact. Like, Ryan Bader, I mean, what a warrior. He keeps fighting. He's trying to stay in it. But, I mean, this guy is just taking abuse, and it's very clear he's not intelligently defending himself. I understand it's a world title fight. I understand it's a veteran fighter in Ryan Bader, but you got to stop that fight earlier and kind of save him from himself, because he was not in that fight probably 20 to 30 seconds that they let him stay in.
Yeah, I think he took probably 10 to 15 shots that were totally unnecessary that could have been avoided. But Nemkov, I mean, man, the finishing ability of that guy, once he got Ryan Bader hurt, that was impressive to see him put him away like that. But, okay, so what do you make of the claim that Nemkov is the best light heavyweight on the planet?
So if you take John Jones out of the equation, right, who we both agree, greatest fighter of all time, greatest light heavyweight of all time, greatest current light heavyweight if he chooses to cut to 205 pounds. Like, if you take him out of the equation, I think Nemkov is definitely in the conversation. His only 2 losses are in the Ryzen ring. One of them is to Yuri Prohaska. The other is to Carl Albrechtsen in a split decision that's really questionable if you go back and watch it. He's young. He's with Team Fedor, so he has great coaches, and he's improved massively while in Bellator. I think his grappling's improved. His striking is more creative and more diversified. I'm interested to see where he goes and see if he can defend this belt, because I definitely think he's in the conversation. And it's the first time in a while, I think, that Bellator's had a real claim that one of their champions is actually the best in the world.
So, yeah, I totally agree. All right, so what do you see being next for these guys?
I'd like to see Bader take some time off, because I think he took a beating in this fight, and I kind of want to see him go to heavyweight permanently, to be honest.
I do too.
I'd like to see him either rematch Czech Congo, fight another Fedor guy in Valentin Moldavsky, or fight Vladimir Minakov, the former Bellator champ. I think any of those is more interesting to me than anything at light heavyweight. And then Nemkov, I want to see him fight the winner of Lyoto Machida and Phil Davis this weekend, and then take on Corey Anderson, assuming that Corey Anderson wins his Bellator debut this fall.
Corey Anderson hasn't got booked yet, has he? I think he came.
He hasn't gotten booked.
No. Okay.
Scott Coker said that he should fight sometime in November, but it will not be for the title.
Okay. All right, so that leads me to my next question. You and I talked about this a little bit, but how would you rank the top 5 light heavyweights in the world right now across Bellator and UFC?
So obviously we're excluding John Jones, who has said that he's moving up to heavyweight. He would be the de facto number 1, right? But order from 5 to 1. So 5, I have Jan Blachowicz. I think he's showcased that he's one of the best in the world. 4, I would have Ryan Bader. I just think he's kind of like Jan Blachowicz with better wrestling, in my opinion. I think they're very similar fighters. 3, I have Thiago Santos. I think he's really good, and we'll see what he looks like coming off the knee injury. 2, I have Vadim Nemkov. And 1, I have Dom Reyes. But any of those top 3 guys are really close. I could see, if you told me that those top three guys beat each other up and it was kind of a weird triangle, I would not be surprised at all. What did you have?
I think it's so close. I think, like you said, with John out, it's very, very even right now. And I think now's the time for the next great light heavyweight to establish themselves. So I'm going to go ahead and say Dom is number one. I think Santos is number two, just based alone off of what he did to John Jones on basically two fucked up legs. I'm going to put Nemkov at 3, Jan at 4, and Bader at 5. That's how I see it right now. Obviously, that could have been the last time we see Bader at light heavyweight. So I think time will kind of tell what some of those guys like Yuri Prohaskin and Rakic do over the next year or so. But that's how I see light heavyweight right now. And I see it as kind of a rebuilding process, after the greatest fighter of all time is moving up a weight class. So it'd be interesting to see how that plays out. Let's move on to the Frankie Edgar versus Pedro Munoz fight. What did you think of this fight?
I thought it was a really close fight. It was exciting stylistically. Two guys who were really tacticians in there, but not in the way that it was a chess match, right? Like there was a lot of technique, but they still let the fists go. They let the strikes go. I had Frankie winning 3-2. I saw a lot of controversy around this fight, but I just thought Munoz was not active enough in the early rounds. So in a really close fight, I thought the early rounds pretty clearly went to Frankie due to activity, but definitely a close fight. What did you think?
I agree. I had it 3-2, maybe 4-1 Frankie. I just thought Frankie was a more active fighter. It was good to see. It almost looked like a kind of a vintage Frankie Edgar fight. I mean, he was taking big shots, but he was moving with them, and he just kept coming. The footwork was great. I thought he looked really good. So I was happy to see Frankie come back and put on a good performance after struggling his last couple outs. So I had it 3-2, possibly 4-1. I had no problem with the decision. For Munoz, he's now lost 2 in a row. So where do you think he goes from here?
I love the matchup with Brian Boom Kelleher. I think Boom, has really been kind of a company man throughout the whole COVID situation. Both he and Pedro Munoz have great guillotines, so I think that's a cool matchup. And it gives Munoz a chance against a guy who, not to disparage Boom Kelleher, who I think is a great fighter, but it gives Brian a chance to break into the top 10. It gives Pedro a chance against a guy who is, maybe not a top 15 fighter, at least not right now, and kind of gives him a chance to bounce back against those 2 losses. So I actually think it's a perfect matchup for those 2 guys.
Yeah, I totally agree. I'm down with that. So, for Frankie, obviously the move down to 135 was a great success. What's next for him?
I still love the Frankie against Dom Cruz fight
too.
Stylistically.
Yeah.
I think it's so fun. I think it's 2 legends of the sport. I think it's Frankie's chance to show that he would have been the most elite bantamweight of his generation. But if Frankie is after this 135 belt, even right now, it's got to be Corey Sandhagen. That's who he's got to chase. Like, if he wants to move up in these rankings, I mean, that would be the guy to fight, in my opinion. But I do love the Dom Cruz matchup stylistically.
Yeah, I got to go with the Dom Cruz matchup. I'd like to see Dom fight again. And it's kind of a fun old guy fight. It's not make or break for title, but if either guy won, it's a step back in the right direction. I think both of those guys have 2 or 3 more left in them. I think Dom's going to feel – he's not going to feel great about his last fight, and I think he's going to want to get back in there. You follow his social media. He's training constantly. So he looks like he's ready to get back in there and make it happen. And that's a great matchup. Is Sandhagen matched up with anyone right now?
No, he has not been matched up.
Okay. All right, well, yeah, I'm down with that. Let's move on to Alistair Overeem. The gift that keeps giving after all these years gets another devastating finish against Augusto Sakai. What did you make of the fight, and what did you make of Overeem's game plan?
I think he's the craftiest fighter of all time at heavyweight, right? I mean, you look at Fedor, you look at Stipe, I mean, 2 very skilled fighters. They just don't have the gamesmanship that Overeem has, in my opinion. Like Overeem uses the shell for most of this fight. He defends himself. He kind of absorbs these shots from Sakai that are not fight enders. He doesn't take anything cleanly. He lets Sakai kind of punch himself out. And then by the time the 4th round rolls around, Overeem's just ready to finish him because Sakai is exhausted. So Overeem's like hitting takedowns, hitting ground and pound. I mean, it's just so veteran. It's so smart. It's so crafty in there. I was so impressed by this performance from Alistair Overeem. What did you think?
I totally agree. I think Overeem's his ability to continue to reinvent himself. You know, he's got, I think, 14 or 15 knockouts on his record, and you know, some of the most memorable ones, the Francis one, the Rosenstruik one, are some of the most vicious knockouts in UFC history. But the dude just keeps coming back, and he keeps getting better, and he keeps adding tools to his arsenal late into his 40s, which you don't see at heavyweight. You know, at heavyweight, most of these guys are kind of one-trick ponies. They're either wrestler, ground and pound guys, or they're, you know, big knockout guys. And Overeem is probably became one of the most well-rounded fighters on the roster. He's got 66 professional fights. You know, he's fought in the best of 4, 5, 6 different organizations, from Pride to Dream to K1, Strike Force. I mean, the dude's done it all. His resume, when it's all said and done, is going to be one of the best MMA resumes of all time. But I really do. I think his fight IQ and his recent strategy, it's like, you know, he's just going to take these guys. He's going to fight safe. He's not going to take damage in the early rounds. He's not going to get viciously knocked out like he did against Francis. He's going to fight safe. He's going to drain these guys in the early rounds. He'll even give up 1 or 2 rounds. But come round 3, round 4, round 5, I mean, he's going to take you down. He's going to beat you up, and he's going to get the finish. And it's very impressive to keep watching this dude evolve and grow, you know, over his career. And I really do. We'll talk about this later, but I really do think he'll earn his way back to another title fight. I really do. So with this fight, obviously Overeem's not done, but for you, what does this do for Overeem's legacy, and where do you currently rank him all time as a heavyweight?
I mean, this guy's 40 years old. You know, he's clearly not the same guy physically. I mean, when you think about what he looks like now versus like the Overeem days when he fought Brock Lesnar, it's just not the same guy. And he's still finishing top 15 heavyweights in the world. Like, there's no doubt in my mind that Augusto Sakai is a top 15 heavyweight in the world right now. And Overeem finished him. And like you said, it's 66 pro MMA fights. It's across 20 years. It's across every major organization in the sport. You know, he's never really had the recognition that he deserves, in my opinion. But to me, the 3 best heavyweights of all time, it's Fedor, Stipe, and then Alistair Overeem. And I don't see a guy who has the resume that he has in terms of, I mean, if you think about, I mean, even if you include all his kickboxing fights, it's ridiculous. This guy's an Iron Man. He constantly evolves. He's been at every major camp in MMA. It's really like, it's kind of an unheard of career that this guy has put together. And I could not be more impressed that at 40 years old, he is still at the top of the game doing this.
Yeah, and when he came and gave a seminar at our gym a couple months ago, and that's one of the things he brought up, is he just said that's been his strategy over his whole career. Is, you know, he'll go to a gym for 1 or 2 years, and he'll switch and go to the next one and keep going and keep going and keep going. And the way he sees it is he's learning, he's taking one thing from this gym, and combining it and adding to his toolbox, which, like I said, I mean, that's the biggest thing that stood out to me over his most recent win. The dude's really, if you take the Rosenstruik fight out, which he was winning the entire fight, I mean, he's won 4 of his last 5 at heavyweight, which is, I mean, pretty awesome for a dude that's 40 years old. Yeah, I think at the end of his career, if he does not end up getting a heavyweight belt, we're going to have him in that discussion about the best fighter of all time to not win a UFC belt. And when we have that discussion, a lot of times we leave Overeem out. You know, we focus on the Dan Hendersons, Uriah Favors, who are we talking about?
Even Yoel Romero gets brought up more than Overeem.
Yeah, I mean, just I went down and looked through his resume today, and it is absolutely ridiculous. He's got wins over 6 former UFC champions: Vitor Belfort, Verdum, Lesnar, Mir, JDS, and Arlovsky. It's unbelievable. It's unbelievable what that dude's done over his career, and he just keeps getting better and better. So, I think in this next fight, he's going to get ranked up, matched up against someone in the top 5. Who would you like to see him fight in the top 5? Because you look at the rankings right now, he's got knockout losses to everyone that's ahead of him. So Stipe knocked him out, Francis knocked him out, Blades finished him, and Rosenstruik finished him. So I really don't think you could go wrong with any of those matchups, but who in particular would you like to see him fight next?
Yeah, I really want to see the Jairzinho-Rosenstruik rematch. I want to see Biggie Boy against Overeem. I think that stoppage was kind of suspect. I think, like you said, I think Overeem won every single round of that fight. I think he was winning that fight 50-45 if that doesn't get stopped. So that's what I want to see. I want to see him be able to get that one back. And I think if he does, it's hard to argue that he's not next in line for the title shot, right? I mean, I don't see how, especially if Francis gets it, like how you could argue that you would rather see the Blades rematch against Francis for a trilogy. He's lost 2 fights already over the Overeem rematch. I just think I'd much rather see that fight.
Yeah, another one to throw at you is I wouldn't put it past the UFC to offer the John Jones fight. If they move forward with Stipe versus Francis, I think Overeem is a great stylistic matchup for John Jones. They're former teammates. They've got good storylines there. Obviously, the best light heavyweight of all time versus one of the best heavyweights of all time. So I wouldn't put that one past the UFC booking. Maybe the UFC sees that as the safest fight they can make for John in the top 5 when you look at who's ahead of Overeem right now. So that's something to look at as well. But, yeah, I think they should go with Rosenstruik next. I just think, I agree. I think Alistair dominated that fight. I think he's going to want that one back. And that's another thing he said in the seminar, that he definitely wants to get that one back. And then, I think if he could get a rematch with Stipe, I think it's totally possible we see Alistair Overeem fighting for a title later, maybe 2021 at 41 years old. So that was going to be my next question. What are the odds of Alistair getting one last chance at the title?
I think they're really high. I don't see how you could hold this guy back, especially, if he's able to go in there and get the Biggie Boy fight back and win that one. How do you hold that guy back? How do you tell that guy he's not deserving of a title shot? I think he's right. I think he's 1, maybe 2 wins away from a title shot. And I think he will fight for a UFC title again before his career is done.
I do too. I mean, you look at everyone ahead of him in that top 5, every one of those fights are competitive fights. There's not one fight I see, even the Stipe fight, that I say, oh, that's a landslide. That's going to be a landslide victory for Stipe. And no, Overeem's a tough matchup for anyone, including John Jones in the move up to heavyweight. So another great win for Overeem.
He was winning that Stipe fight until he lost. Yeah, it's a cliche, right? But yeah, he had the submission attempt. I get the joke, like Stipe tapped. It's all over. Everyone loves it. But, Alistair was winning that fight, and then Stipe just kind of took over. And, that happens. That's heavyweight MMA. But at the end of the day, there is literally no one, including Francis, in the heavyweight division who I don't look at against Alistair Overeem and say, you know what? Overeem has a shot. And that's unbelievable to do at 40 years old.
Yeah, I also think if they go ahead and skip Francis for John and they give John the Stipe fight, I think Francis versus Overeem's a great rematch again. He's got that devastating knockout against him. Overeem's going to want to get that one back. So, heavyweight's going to be awesome over the next year. I'm really excited for heavyweight. So, Billy, off of that card, any other fights or fighters worth mentioning?
I mean, you can't not talk about Michelle Pereira is the most exciting guy in MMA, maybe in all of sports. I mean, Showtime kicks, Stockton slaps, he's blowing kisses. I mean, and honestly, Parker, this is the best we've ever seen him look in the UFC cage. Because Imadaev is not a joke fighter at all. And I thought Pereira pieced him up. I thought he really tooled him up. So He's looking better and better. And then shout out to our guy, Brian Boom Kelleher. Another guillotine victory. That guillotine is nasty, man. He looked good too. But yeah, Pereira and Brian Kelleher. Those are my two other shout outs. What did you have?
Yeah, he's going to be a problem. If he looked in this fight, he looked in 10 times better shape than his previous UFC fights. He looked great. He looked super loose in there, and he picked that Russian dude apart. And that Russian he's a tough out. But I thought he looked much improved. I'll be interested to see where he goes next. But I mean, that's a guy that 1, 2, 3 finishes, you could find him in the top 10, you know? So, and then, Boom again with another solid win. I feel like Boom has fought at least 5 times during Corona. At least.
I feel like Boom fights every week like he's an NFL team.
We might have to check the stats on that. But, all right, let's get into this weekend's card. I'm going to let you go ahead and start previewing it.
Yeah, so, honestly, not a great card. We lost the main event with Glover Teixeira testing positive for COVID-19, but some history here. Angela Hill versus Michelle Waterson is the main event. Angela Hill is the first black woman to ever headline a UFC card, so couldn't happen to a better person. I think we both love Angela Hill, love everything she kind of stands for, and just love her attitude about fighting. So very excited to see her fight this week. What do you think about that part? Yeah,
no, that's an awesome historic moment, for the UFC and for Angela Hill. I think this is just a great matchup. This is going to be a super, super fun women's fight. I think it'll be fast-paced. Basically going to be a fast-paced kickboxing match, I think. Both women are super talented. I think Angela Hill's got screwed a couple times on decisions, and I think she's just so small. It's hard for her to finish anyone. She just doesn't have that power, but she's an animal. I love watching her fights. Karate Hottie's great fighter. Getting older, but I think this is a big test for Angela Hill. If she can get a win here, break into the top 10 at strawweight, this is a big shot for her. So for Karate Hottie, she has now lost 2 of her last 3. Like I said, she's aging. She's 34 years old. Do you see this as a must-win for her in her UFC career?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, as much as you and I both love Angela Hill and both love watching her fight, here's the reality. Angela Hill is ranked number 13 in the strawweight division. She's 12-8. If Michelle Waterson can't beat Angela Hill, she's never getting a title shot. I mean, that would set her back multiple years. Even if she went on a winning streak, 37-year-olds, 38-year-olds don't compete at the top of women's strawweight. It's the deepest division in women's MMA. This is a must-win for her if she has aspirations of ever winning a title in this division.
Yeah, and on the other hand, Angela Hill has won 3 of her last 5. One of the losses, we both agreed she got screwed in that decision to Claudia Gadeja. Do you expect her to bounce back here?
Yeah, I do. I said, like we both have said so many times, I think she beat Claudia Gadeja. I think this is a huge spot for her because I think Waterson is actually a more marketable name than Gadeja. And I think now that she's the main event, stylistically, this is someone who is going to stand and bang with her. I mean, Waterson is a stand-up fighter. So I think Ange is going to be able to use her Muay Thai. She's going to be able to, kind of use her elbows, use her knees. And this could be a showcase fight for Angela Hill, in my opinion.
Yeah, I totally agree. So stylistically, let's talk about this real quick, and then we'll get a decision. What do you expect from both of these girls stylistically?
I mean, Waterson, even though they're both stand-up fighters, they fight very differently. Waterson is someone who wants to keep you at range, wants to keep you in kind of that kicking range, use a lot of feints, a lot of movement, keep you on the edge of her kicks, because at the end of the day, she's still really small for the strawweight division. This is someone who fought at atomweight previously. So she's kind of trying to, dance around the outside and, hit you to the body, hit you to the legs, slow you down, and then kind of pick you apart when you get tired on the ground. Hill, on the other hand, she's in your face. She's a striker, but it's elbows and knees. It's classic Muay Thai. She wants to bloody you up. She wants to make this a very dirty fight. I expect her to use the clinch. I think she could even use some trips early and force Waterson to play guard. I think it's going to be really exciting to see, kind of who can kind of control the distance, control the range of this fight. That's ultimately who's going to win this.
All right. Let's get your prediction.
I have Angela Hill by decision. I think she's going to be able to kind of push the action, get Waterson maybe up against the fence, maybe be able to take her down. But ultimately, I think she's just on a different level right now. I think she's really taken a leap in her skill level, and Waterson seems kind of stagnant to me, to be honest. So I have Angela Hill by decision. What do you think?
I do too. I think it's going to be a fun fight. It'll be a back and forth fight, but I think this is going to be the fight that gets Angela over the hill into the top 10, and then it's just going to set up more fun fights for her going forward. So, both of us will go Angela Hill by decision. All right, let's pop over to Bellator. Bellator has 2 cards this weekend, right? A Friday and a Saturday?
They're doing the back-to-back cards, yep.
Yeah, so which one's the Machida one on? Is that Friday?
That's Friday, and then the bantamweight title's Saturday.
Okay, so we've got Lyoto Machida, the Dragon, taking on Phil Davis. We talked about it previously, but in your mind, is this a number 1 contender fight for Nemkov?
I think so, especially with Coker saying that Corey Anderson's not getting an immediate title shot. These are the top 2 light heavyweights in Bellator right now. I mean, the only other guy that would kind of throw a wrench in this plan, and honestly could be a debut fight for Corey Anderson, is Gegard Mousasi at light heavyweight. But, I think Lyoto has some of the best name value in Bellator right now, and Davis and Nemkov fought last year to a very close split decision. So I definitely think this is number 1 contender fight.
So for Lyoto Machida, obviously a legend of the sport, do you see any chance of him ever fighting for another title in Bellator at any division?
I do think he'll fight for a title. I don't think it will be at light heavyweight. I think light heavyweight is actually one of Bellator's deeper divisions. And I think middleweight is actually really shallow for them. So I could see Lyoto Machida fighting for a title at middleweight after they kind of sort out that title situation with Rafael Lovato retiring. But I do think Lyoto Machida fights for a title at some point in Bellator. What do you think? Yeah,
I mean, Bellator, I tend to agree with you. I don't think it's going to be at light heavyweight. Who's the champion at middleweight right now? Mousasi? Or is
it's
it vacant?
Because Lovato retired after he beat Mousasi. So it's supposed to be Mousasi against Douglas Lima for the middleweight title.
But Machida and Mousasi just fought not long ago, right? And I think Mousasi won a decision.
They fought last year, and it's now 1-1 because Machida beat Mousasi earlier. So I could see a trilogy if Mousasi wins, honestly. They're shallow at middleweight.
Yeah, Lyoto Machida is a big enough name that, if one of those guys gets the title, I think he could step right in and get a title shot at. He's got to be 40 years old now too, huh?
I think he's 41.
Yeah. But, so Lyoto Machida, in your mind, is he a Hall of Famer?
He's right on the border for me, right? I think it's really close. He obviously won the UFC title. I think really it's about style, right? Like he's one of the first karate guys to really be successful in the UFC. I think beating Phil Davis, honestly, Phil Davis is still a top 15 light heavyweight in the world for me. So I think if Lyoto Machida was able to beat him at 40 years old, that would add and kind of solidify that this guy is one of the best ever. But it's more about his style than it is about his resume for me. I have no problem if he makes the Hall of Fame, but he's right on the border. What do you think?
I agree. I think he's a pioneer of the sport. He's kind of paved the way for guys like Michael Venom Page, Wonder Boy in the UFC, just that kind of karate style that's been so effective over the years. But, you go down and look at his resume. He's got great wins on it. BJ Penn, Rashard Evans, Randy Couture, Ryan Bader, Dan Henderson, Mousasi, Belfort, Chael Sonnen. He's got the vicious, highlight reel knockouts. So, he's a guy in my mind, when I was growing up, I loved Lyoto Machida. It was just like super exciting to watch. I was a karate guy. I loved it. So I don't know. In my mind, he's a pioneer of the sport, and I think he'll, when he decides to hang it up, become a Hall of Famer for sure. What do you think, or what do you expect of this fight stylistically?
I think this is a classic striker versus grappler matchup, right? I think Lyoto's going to want to keep it at range. He's going to use a lot of footwork. He's going to kick, a lot of leg kicks, a lot of body kicks, and just try and absolutely, take apart Davis very methodically from the outside. And Davis is going to want to press Lyoto right up against the fence, take him down with that double leg, and, keep him there while kind of landing like little rabbit punches or ground and pound, from side control or from a mount position. But I think it's going to be really about Davis trying to control Lyoto on the ground. So it's kind of that classic striker versus grappler matchup.
I agree. I think Davis has to make this fight dirty. He's got to push it up against the cage. He's got to get takedowns. He's got to control him. He's just got to, grind on him basically. And I think if he can do that. Is this a 3 or a 5 round fight? This is probably a 5 round fight.
It's a 3 round fight.
It's 3 round fight. Yeah, I mean, so he could do that for 3 rounds, and I think he cruises to a decision here. And then I do think you see Machida, a couple more times, and maybe another trilogy against Mousasi. So, but anyway, that's a good fight. That's going down Friday, and then you go ahead and jump into the Spaniard Juan Archuleta taking on Patchy Mix.
Yeah, so that's Saturday. That's for the Bellator vacant bantamweight title with Kyoji Horiguchi hurt. So another striker versus grappler matchup, but a little different. Like Patchy Mix is more of a submission artist than Phil Davis is. He's not a control guy. He's not like one of your classic wrestlers. Like he's looking to take the back and choke people out, and he's very good at it. I think his last 5 or 6 wins have been by submission. And then Archuleta is kind of the classic kickboxer, trains with TJ Dillashaw, fights like TJ Dillashaw, very fast, very good movement. So it's really a question of who can impose their will, right? It's, who's going to win that battle. Is Mix going to be able to get Archuleta to the ground and submit him? Or is Archuleta going to be able to keep the fight standing and kind of pick Patrick Mix apart from the outside?
Yeah, I totally agree with you. So where do you put the winner of this in the hierarchy of the 135-pound weight class, across the UFC and Bellator?
Yeah, I still think, Aljo and Peter Yan are the 2 best bantamweights in the world for my money. And I would probably put Marlon Moraes and Cody Garbrandt above either Mix or Archuleta. But I think a guy like Frankie Edgar or Corey Sandhagen would have a really hard time against either of these guys. I think they're right there, kind of in the top 10 in the world, if not the top 5. What do you think?
I agree. I think anyone from maybe 5 to 10, it's a very competitive fight. But once you get past number 5, once you get into the Cody Garbrandts and Marlon Moraes, Aljamain Sterling's, Peter Yan, that's a big ass. That division is super, super competitive right now. So, I'd say anywhere from 5 to 10. So, what is your prediction on this fight?
I'm going to take Mix. I'm going to take Mix by 3rd round submission. And you know what? I think there is a good chance that Patchy Mix, we're looking up in a year or 2 and saying that guy's the best bantamweight in the world. I've never seen someone grapple in MMA like him. I've never seen someone with kind of the speed and technique that he has on the ground at this division. So I'm very excited to watch his rise. I know we both love Juan Archuleta and love watching him fight, but I think Patrick Mix might be one of the best fighters in the world at bantamweight.
I'm going to go with my guy, Juan Archuleta. I think he gets a knockout, 2nd round knockout. I just like Juan Archuleta. He's got that, TJ Dillashaw, bang Muay Thai, striking style. Just super fun to watch, super active, hard to track down. He's coming off a loss, isn't he? So I'm going to look for him
to Pitbull brother.
Yeah, so I'm going to look for him to bounce back here. I think he's, for that weight class, he's a super devastating puncher. I'm going to go knockout the Spaniard Juan Archuleta. So Bellator, 2 fun cards this weekend. All right, let's get into Parker's favorite topic, Billy. We're going to go Diaz on the podcast here. Let's go. All right. So we're going to talk briefly about Nate Diaz, Nick Diaz. Last week came out that the BMF round 2 was being negotiated, not finalized yet, but they're looking at early January to book it. How interested are you in this rematch?
To be honest, not that interested. I think Jorge Masvidal beat the brakes off of Nate Diaz. I've watched that fight a few times now because initially I was like, that was a fun competitive fight. And then when I went back and watched it, I was like, actually, Jorge Masvidal very badly beat Nate Diaz and possibly would have finished him. I know this is going to be unpopular. It's definitely going to be unpopular with you. Nate Diaz is not a top 10 welterweight in the world. I don't even know if he's a top 15 welterweight in the world, but he's a top 5 draw in the UFC, and that's why he's relevant. It's his character that people are more interested in than his actual fighting ability. At this point, he's a 35-year-old with double-digit losses who's taken a ton of damage in his career and hasn't shown a ton of growth over the past 4 or so years since he fought Conor. I'm just not that interested, and I don't see any reason why Jorge Masvidal doesn't absolutely beat the brakes off him again.
I agree with you that I think Nate, we've seen the best of him. I think he peaked in, Nate versus Conor 1 was kind of the height of his powers, and ever since then he's just became kind of this celebrity fighter that, is a big name that they can headline a pay-per-view with. But I still think it's a fun fight. It's a competitive fight. I think Nate was injured going into the last fight, had a knee injury that hindered his training. So that'll be very interesting to see. I don't know the difference. I just think the second fight is going to be much more competitive than the first fight. I do think if this ends up being some sort of crazy war, that we get a trilogy, because I don't know. I don't think Jorge Masvidal wants to fight Woodley or Colby, right now. I don't think he's going to fight Leon Edwards. So I don't know. I just think he's in this weird spot where it's like, you either got to fight the contender or you got to take big money fights. And I think Jorge's going to take big money fights. And I still think, I think with the win off of Nate, he could, just with how popular he is and how he talks, I think he could talk himself back into a title fight. So for Jorge Masvidal, it's kind of a win-win. He gets a giant payday. He's fighting a guy that he pretty much pieced up the first 3 rounds of that fight, although it got stopped in, somewhat controversy. Nate's just a bigger draw for him right now. So I wouldn't be surprised if you see him fight Nate twice, if Nate wins a decision or something here and then they fight again. I just, unless it's for the title at welterweight, I don't see Jorge fighting contenders.
If I'm Jorge Masvidal, I'd fight Nate Diaz once a week.
Yeah.
I think it's an easier fight than any of those guys that you named, right?
Yeah.
Like, I don't think Nate is Tyron Woodley, even this diminished Tyron Woodley that we've seen. I don't think he's Colby Covington. I don't think he's Leon Edwards. I don't even think he's like a Damian Maia. Like, I don't even think he's that good. Like, I would fight him every week. He's worth more money. You can headline pay-per-views with him. Like, I would fight him literally every week and cash those checks if you're Jorge Masvidal, because that's the name of the game at this point for Jorge. He probably has max 5 fights left. Maximize that value. Fight Nate. Fight Conor. Fight friggin' Cowboy again. Like, fight the biggest possible names. Fight Canelo. Like, I would get in there if I'm Jorge Masvidal and fight the biggest possible names I could fight and cash those checks. And if people don't like it, like, tough, but you guys aren't buying the pay-per-views when it's number 1 versus number 2. Like, that's the reality. People are buying these pay-per-views. It is one of the highest selling pay-per-views in UFC history for the BMF title, and it was not a competitive fight. Why would you not do that if you're Jorge Masvidal? It makes no sense not to.
Yeah, I get it. Like, Colby and Woodley and Leon Edwards bitching about it. But, I mean, even Woodley, when he was champion, Jorge Masvidal fighting Nate Diaz, who's ranked, 8 at welterweight right now, is a much bigger fight than Jorge Masvidal fighting Tyron Woodley when he was the champion. That's the bottom line. So, I've got no problem with it. I'm totally down with it. And, we're going to move to this next, but I hope they could get the Diaz brothers on the same card. That would be epic. I would absolutely love that. But, all right, that brings us to the next topic. So, Nick Diaz alleges again that he's making his return. He's been out of the octagon for almost 6 years. Earlier this week, he released a video looking absolutely shredded. Had the haircut, looked like a vintage. He looked like 25-year-old Nick Diaz. I mean, the dude looked really, really good. Apparently went through a 14-week training camp, got absolutely shredded, back to training. Billy, what's your initial reactions of Nick Diaz's return?
I call this segment Parker Eats the Trash again.
No.
This is every year we see this, Parker. Every year. I looked it up. Every single year there's a news story that comes out that Nick Diaz is plotting a return to MMA. He's in camp, blah, 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 blah. Here's the reality. Here's the facts, right? Nick Diaz has not fought in 6 years. He has not won a fight since 2011. When he last won a fight in 2011, Conor McGregor was fighting on Celtic Gladiator cards. That's the last time that Nick Diaz won a fight. He's not a top 10 at welterweight. By the way,
I disagree. I totally disagree.
His last win is against BJ Penn. It's against BJ Penn.
I think Nick is competitive against everyone in the top 10 except Colby and except Usman. Look at the roster.
Nonsense. It's nonsense. We have no idea. This camp that he's in, he's not at ATT. He's not at Jackson Wink. He's not at Rufus Sport. The only person who is verifying that this is happening are the actual Diaz brothers. Nate got smashed against Jorge Masvidal, who is in the top 10 at welterweight, right? AJ Agazarm, who apparently trains with these guys every day,
you can't compare
can't beat
AJ
jobbers
Agazarm.
in Bellator.
No,
he can't beat jobbers in Bellator.
You cannot compare AJ Agazarm to the Diaz brothers.
That's who he's training with. That's his training partner.
Well, he's like his buddy, his stoner buddy that he brought along and got into fighting. That guy's a scrub. Nick Diaz and Nate Diaz are world class. Nick even more so. In his prime was one of the best fighters on the planet.
It was 10 years ago. That guy hasn't been a top 10 welterweight since 2009, Parker.
I don't know, Billy.
He hasn't.
I think he's making a comeback. I think he's for real.
He's been partying in Vegas on Instagram for a year straight. He's been at the Encore Beach Club.
I think he's coming back, Billy. He's coming back, and it's going to be epic. It's going to be awesome. You're seriously telling me? Hold on. Let me pull up the UFC welterweight rankings right now. Oh, that's her.
Neil Magny beats the brakes off Nick Diaz right now. Beats the brakes off him.
I don't know if Neil Magny beats.
Not fun to watch fight.
I don't know if Neil Magny beats Nate Diaz, and Nick Diaz, in my mind, is a much better fighter.
Maybe 10, 12 years ago. Not today. It's
sure?
2020, pal.
The guy hasn't fought. He's fresh. He's ready to go. You look at
he's been smoking joints the size of my thumb at the Encore Beach Club for a year and a half.
Maybe he's been recovering. He's been resting his mind and his body. Okay, let's go. Say yes or no. Damian Maia.
No.
No, that's an interesting fight. Stephen Wonderboy Thompson.
No, not close. Not a fun fight, not a close fight.
Showtime Pettis.
No.
What? Are you kidding me?
No,
Woodley.
He doesn't beat him. He does not beat him.
I'm saying competitive.
Jeff Neal's ranked 12th. Jeff Neal hurts Nick Diaz very badly. Jeff Neal puts Nick Diaz in the hospital. He's having surgery. It is bad. Bad.
I don't think so. He's going to have surgery anyway with that scar tissue. But, all right, well, you and I are definitely at odds here. We're going to see. Time will tell. But Nick Diaz allegedly making a comeback. All right, let me go to my next question. If he does make a comeback, who do you want to see him match up with first? And assuming he gets a win, which he will, how many times do you think he fights in 2021?
He's not coming back for a one-off, right? Unless he gets beat badly like Chuck Liddell, Tito Ortiz style. That's the only time he's going to be a one-off. And then we can finally put this to bed. The two guys that I would like to see him fight if he comes back, Robbie Lawler, who's looked terrible over his past few fights has looked awful. And then Diego Sanchez is the other guy with Josh Fabia, the absolute insane guru, using his defensive chicken tactics. But Diego Sanchez has multiple wins since Nick Diaz has last fought.
Okay. Who am I going with here? I think he's going to come back early 2021. I like the Robbie Lawler fight. They've got history. Nick knocked him out back in the day. I really like the winner. Assuming that Jorge beats Nate again, I think that's like a given. And also assuming that Nick
you're sitting here like I'm a Diaz brothers fan, and you want to put Nate and Nick against Jorge Masvidal again. Like that is not.
I just think it's great drama.
See happen if I'm a fan of someone.
I love storylines. I don't think hurt. I think the second fight with Nate's going to be a lot more competitive. If Jorge gets past Nate again and Nick gets a win in early 2021, that's a gigantic fight. That's a bigger fight than Nate versus Jorge. Nick versus Jorge is a bigger fight. 100%.
Nick, the MMA fan today, like you and I know who Nick Diaz is. He is not nearly as big as you think he is with the populace right now.
That's
who
bullshit.
Watches MMA.
You go to a fight and Nick Diaz is there. He's like a god. He walks in the arena, the whole crowd goes wild. I remember he was in Vegas for the Conor fight. He walked in, they flashed him on the screen, he just gave a wave, and the whole crowd erupted. The Diaz brothers have this weird just cult following. And I don't know. I hope the UFC has fucked this up royally over the last 6 years, and I hope they make it right, and we get 2 to 3 more fun fights out of these guys. That's all I'm saying. I'm not saying Nick Diaz is going to win a title, but I'm saying he's going to come back and have some super fun fights if he's going to fight. That's
and I'm saying this is a 37-year-old man who has not won a fight in a decade. Let's be realistic.
Okay. Billy the realist. All right. Let's swing through a couple more current events, and then we'll get out of here right on an hour. Wow, we're making good time, Billy. All right, so Dustin versus Tony is in jeopardy, and it's actually officially off as of today. Dustin said he will not be fighting on the October 24th card. That's a kick in the nuts. That was really stacking up to be an awesome fight. What do you think the chances are of this fight materializing? If not on the October 24th card, down the line.
I think this is like an absolutely perfect fight. I mean, like this is two very fan-friendly guys. Dustin Porier is as good a guy as you get in this sport. He's absolutely paid his dues. He's an extremely exciting fighter. You and I both think he's the second best lightweight in the world. I don't understand why he can't get paid. Like if Dustin Porier can't get paid by the UFC, who can? I just don't see why you don't pay him. I hope this fight happens. I'm afraid that the UFC is trying to kind of cut back on costs or cut back on salaries, but this fight should happen. So I'm going to say 85% I think that this fight happens.
Yeah, I mean, you look at Dustin Poirier's last 5 fights, outside of the Khabib fight, Dan Hooker, fight of the night, incredible fight. Max Holloway, fight of the night, incredible fight. Eddie Alvarez, crazy fight. Justin Gaethje, insane fight. This is one of the biggest action fighters in MMA, and he's been doing it for 10 plus years at the highest level. He needs to be paid what he's worth. I totally agree with that. And they could be holding out to get a main event. I mean, like, Dustin versus Tony could definitely headline a pay-per-view, I think.
I mean, 2 of those fights, like I would argue that the Poirier-Holloway fight and the Poirier-Gaethje fight weren't just fight of the night. I'd argue they were fight of the year contenders. And I'd argue that his fight with Dan Hooker is the front runner or 2 behind Joanna and Wiley for fight of the year this year. I mean, that guy, every time he goes out there, it's literally one of the top 5 fights of the year. I don't get why you don't pay him.
Yeah, 100%. So hopefully that'll get booked. I think both of those guys want to make that happen. I think that'll get booked. If not on the October card, maybe November, December. But all right, let's move on to the next one. Tyron Woodley matchup coming up against Colby Covington. That's next weekend, right? The 18th?
I think it's the 19th, right?
Okay.
But yes, it is next week.
So Woodley came out saying he's going to let the hands go, and that's something we've heard for the last 2 fights. So what were your thoughts on that?
I'm like the last Tyron Woodley fan left, I feel like, but I just think it's like getting hard to trust him when he says stuff like this. Like he's saying like, I'll take the point deduction. I'll hit him with a low blow. Like I'm finally going to listen to the fans, blah, 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 blah. Like you fought your last 50 minutes in the octagon where it was like your hands were tied behind your back. Like if you were going to let the hands go, like, where's it been, T. Wood? Like, I still think he's got some of the biggest power in the welterweight division. He's clearly got pretty good boxing. Like, punch the guy in the face. I mean, Colby Covington's not like some incredible striker. It's really about the cardio with Covington. It's about his grinding wrestling style. Like, I hope he lets the hands go because that's where Tyron Woodley's the most successful. But at the end of the day, how do we trust this guy with these kind of statements at this point?
I'm really scared for this fight for Tyron. I think Colby's going to do the same thing that Usman and Gilbert Burns did, and he's going to melt Tyron Woodley. I really do. I really, really do. I know there's a lot of heat on this fight. I know T. Wood's going to maybe get up more for this fight than he did the other 2 fights, but still, I mean, if he doesn't put on a performance here, who's going to want to watch his fights? I think that could be it for him. If he comes in here and just gets dominated for 5 rounds again, I think he needs to hang it up. I really do. I just think he's getting to the end of the line here where it's like no one's going to pay to watch these fights where he just doesn't do anything. Dean Thomas in the corner has to talk him up to throw hands, and that's what got him to the dance.
Other thing, Park. Tyron Woodley has some of the best wrestling credentials in the entire UFC. He's a All-American Division I wrestler. Colby Covington is a junior college wrestler. Like, I think Colby Covington is a very good wrestler and he's a very good grappler. But if you're Tyron Woodley and not only do you not throw hands with this guy who you say that you absolutely hate, you let him wrestle you and hold you down when you have the credentials that you have in the wrestling department, that's embarrassing. I would be embarrassed if I'm Tyron Woodley and I let Colby Covington come in, grab my waist, take me to the ground, and hold me there. Like, I completely agree with you. I'm completely on the same page as you. Like, I hope this is true. I hope Tyron Woodley's going to let those hands go and really take it to Covington because I don't think Colby has good striking defense at all. But if he gets wrestled and dominated on the mat by Colby Covington, I agree with you. Hang the gloves up. Leave him right there because you can leave your All-American singlet from Mizzou there too because you got embarrassed by a guy who does not have half the wrestling credentials that you have.
I agree. I honestly think with T. Wood, he's just 1 foot out the door, and he's been like that for since he lost his title. I really do. He just had nothing to offer in those last 2 fights, and I really do think you're going to see more of the same. I expect Colby to just put the pace on him, and I think he's going to melt him. I really do. We'll jump into it. Well, maybe not next week. I'll be slinging arrows at Elks, but we'll try to talk about it and definitely recap it after it happens. But yeah, that's a big fight coming up in 2 weeks. So. All right, let's move on. Next, Leon Edwards. Leon Edwards just can't catch a break. Can't catch a break. Can't get anyone to fight him. Just left out in the cold. So I know Chael Sonnen was going off about some comments that Edwards made. What are your thoughts of kind of the current state of Leon Edwards right now?
I mean, I don't say this all that often because I kind of think Chael's a blowhard in a lot of respects, even though I really enjoy it. It's super entertaining. But Chael's right here. Chael's right that Leon can't get anyone to care. I mean, you can sit there and say he can't catch a break. You can sit there and feel bad for the guy for getting the Tyron Woodley fight taken away from him because of the pandemic. But at the end of the day, this is a sport where you make your own luck. This is a sport where you have to go out there and everything gets taken from you in a moment. Everything gets given to you in a moment, too. You look at Jorge Masvidal. And I think Gilbert Burns just ate Leon Edwards' lunch. While Leon Edwards has been complaining about nobody wanting to fight him, been whining about not getting a title, been, trying to get these guys to fight him, Gilbert Burns just went out there and friggin' did it, man. He just went out there. He fought every week. He fought every card. He fought short notice. He finished guys. He was an exciting fighter. Gilbert Burns didn't go out there and do the Colby Covington thing and make it all about politics. He didn't, try and be a Conor McGregor shit talker. He just went out there and he fought and he earned it. And Leon Edwards got passed by because of it. So I don't think Leon Edwards is next in line for the title at all. I think he's going to have to fight like a Chiesa or a Wonder Boy to kind of get back in that title talk. And that's the reality, is he just didn't take advantage of the position he was in after the RDA fight. And now he's kind of left out in the cold because of it. And like Chael said, he has not made himself interesting enough for people to care. Masvidal and Nate have just been punking him about him getting punched backstage. And that's the reality, man. You got to earn it every second, every day in this sport. And he just has kind of let himself sit on the sidelines. I don't know. What do you think?
I don't think I can add anything else to that. That was pretty well said there, Billy. I agree. I mean, this sport's all about...
It means so much coming from you.
This sport's all about waves, and you got to ride the wave when you're hot. You can't sit on the sidelines. You're going to get passed by. It's Darwinism, if I can get scientific on you. Survival of the fittest, Billy. If you sit on the sidelines and don't fight, you're going to get passed by the hungry wolves like Gilbert Burns. So it's like, I don't know. You feel bad because he has got a couple bad breaks. But the bottom line is, if you want to get that belt, you want to be the best in the world, you have to keep fighting until you are. And that's what Burns has done, and that's what Leon Edwards hasn't. So, yeah, that's where we're at, Billy. But we stuck to an hour-ish. We did pretty good.
I think we're good, man. I think we did well here.
Yeah. Well, let's wrap it. That is episode 47. Holy shit, we are coming up on 50, Billy. We're going to have to have a celebration for our 50th episode. We're rocking and rolling. I will be out next week, so I don't think we'll have an episode next week, but we'll be back the next week to recap Colby versus Woodley, and then we're going to keep some interviews rolling. We got some stuff lined up, so we will keep bringing some interviews. Until then, everyone like, subscribe, do all that good stuff. Billy, any closing words?
Hey, check out the Orion Kosuke interview, and I wrote a companion article over at MMA Prospects. Orion Kosuke is the Goku of MMA. He's the next up-and-coming guy. I think Parker and I both agree that one day we're going to be talking about this guy as a top 15 fighter, if not a 100%. Title challenger.
100%.
So definitely check out that episode and, enjoy, 3 fight cards this weekend. Really exciting stuff. So check that out. And, that's all I have here, Park. I'm ready to get out of here, man. Have fun hunting the elk.
I'm going to go sling some arrows. All right. See y'all later, everyone. Adios.
Texas Trees is the premier tree care company in the DFW area. Whether you need basic maintenance or specialized services, when it comes to trees, we've got you covered. Pruning, chipping, bracing, and cabling, even root barriers and disease control, we do it all. And if you aren't sure what you need, we have certified arborists on staff to point you in the right direction. Visit us at northtexastrees.net. That's northtexastrees.net. Thanks for listening to Parker's MMA Show. Take a moment to rate and review on Apple Podcast or wherever you get your podcast, and visit ParkerKeen'sMMAShow.podbean.com for additional information on Parker and to stay up to date on the latest drama in the fight world. For more information and important links about today's episode, check out the show notes.